días, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a motherfucking smack addict. Bye up, bye up. And in Menudo style in direct fashion, we're going to get straight into the content of the day. But before we do, let's hit that like and subscribe button. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I am kicking. And I highly appreciate all the support, man. Gracias. I know I couldn't do it without you. So, you know, in the California prison system, once you get sentenced, once you go through county jail, you go to reception, usually you sit there from anywhere from 1 to 3 months, and bam, as soon as they get bed space, you go to where you go. Now, just because you're young, it's your first term, doesn't absolutely mean you're going to go to a fire camp or you're going to go to a level 1 or a level 2. Depending upon your case factors, what you're in there for, what you're charged for, is where you're ultimately going to go. They have a point system. And that point system in California is all over the place. Age, if you were in the youth authority, the nature of your crime, all these different factors come into play when they ultimately decide, this committee ultimately decides where they're going to place you and at what level. Now, of course, if you got a murder case, you're a lifer, you're doing all day, there's certain circumstances that dictate you have to go behind walls and not just fences. So more than likely, you're going to be placed in a prison like that. But if you're a young gang member, fully active, you're in for killing a couple people, whatever the case may be, more than likely you're going to hit a level 4 yard. Not necessarily a 180, but a level 4. Okay? Now, if you go into prison, you start doing more pegadas, you start removing people, and you start to function, then you're going to find yourself in a 180 yard or one of these dangerous prisons. You know, but more than likely, if you're just a first termer, and you got a pretty vicious case, they're going to put you in a level 3/level 4, and that's where you're going to end up. And then according to how you do your time in the state of California is where you're ultimately going to end up. These people that go to level 2s and level 1s are in there for DUIs. They're in there for petty thefts and burglaries and things like that. Pretty much non-violent crimes. Now, you can have a violent crime and be on a level 2, but not necessarily a level 1 unless you drop your points over a long period of time. Now, you could start out at a level 4, program and function and do your time and ultimately end up a level 3, maybe even possibly a level 2. But if you're really in the mix like that on a general population yard and you're really riding with your people, depending upon who your people are, you're probably not ever going to see a level 2 or get to sniff it, right? Now, for a while there was this big thing going on. And they were shipping and basically sending gang members and prisoners to different states to these private prisons. Now, you hear the stories about Wes Watson where he talks about he was here and he was there and he was everywhere. And I'm going to tell you exactly where Wes Watson was. The majority of his time he did in Oklahoma at a CCAS prison, right? Which basically is a private prison. Now, this company came in, they started buying prisons or building prisons, and they were privately owned prisons. And they started basically renting bed space out to states that had overflow. Now, California is maxed out. For a long time, before they were letting people out and all these new laws were changing, they were maxed out, man. They were sleeping, in some cases, man, they had gyms filled up with people. They converted the gym into dormitories. I slept in a gym before, man. They had overflow, which was basically bunks in the middle of the day room on each side. Triple bunk status. There was so much going on, and all these gyms had triple bunks. I mean, they were trying to squeeze blood out of an orange. They were trying to put as much people in a confined space as possible. Of course, people started to file lawsuits, man. Human rights activists, people started to speak up. And there was people that started to voice their opinion and let legislature know, let Congress know, hey, you guys are housing them like sardines. Enough is enough. So what they did, because they're not going to just let you out, right, was they contracted with CCAS and started to send their prisoners in California to different facilities throughout the United States. And I know 3 states that they sent them to were Oklahoma, Eloy, Arizona, and of course, somewhere in Louisiana. Now, I've known a lot of people that were in Oklahoma. And according to the way that they got down, and this is how California moves, right? Anytime you send a substantial amount of heads from California, not only do you send their bodies, but you send that mentality, that get down. And they were sending a lot of Norteños, a lot of Southsiders, whites, blacks, But all these guys that they were sending from these higher level prisons, these 3s and these 4s, were in the mix. They had this mentality. Now, it wasn't like you got to earn your way and do good and get shipped to these prisons that were ran a little bit more loose, because you got to understand it was all about the money. These CCA prisons were very dangerous. Albeit you hear a lot of stories, man, about things that happen. And of course they happened because what you had was a mixture of inmates from different states. But California always took precedent over everyone. And the reason being that that mentality that the West Coast and California has is different than any other prison system in the world. There's a lot that are similar. Texas is similar. Arizona is similar. And don't downplay the fact that these guys really rock and handle their business. But because California is so racially motivated and ran politically according to the gangs, it was only a matter of time before they went in and basically deboed and muscled in and used that California mentality and indoctrinated everyone around them with it. Because I'm going to be real with you, man. A lot of people in a lot of different states, maybe not the southwestern states, because they always have their own thing going. But once you pass that line and you start getting into Oklahomas and New York cities and them type of, you know, anything past the Midwest and the East, they look at California some type of way. They either love you or they hate you. And that's a fact, right? And in more cases than not, like say the state of New York, okay, you got a lot of Crips and you have a lot of Bloods, and they look at California as the big homies. California is the birthplace of the Crips and the Bloods. So the guys from New York, the United Blood Nation and all these different Bloods, they will look to California as the pioneers, the founding fathers. And that's just what it is. So when North and South as well go to these different state prisons, these CCAs, they're looked at the same way. So what happened was it became mini California prisons. You had a lot of vatos that were going in there that necessarily probably wouldn't have been at a high level. They wouldn't have been a shot caller or anyone in position like that. Now, because they got to these new CCA prisons that were loosely ran, there was a lot going on, right? Just like any California prison, man, once guys get there with that mentality, they figure it out. They figure out the program. So there was a lot of narcotics being entered. There was a lot of fighting happening. You know, my brother was in Eloy, Arizona, in La Palma. La Palma was one of the main prisons that they sent out-of-staters to. And he was there. Now, they had certain different things that they had in California. They had, in some places, not all places, and I'm not sure about La Palma, they had gaming consoles and tablets, and they were ahead of their time because it was a privately ran prison. Their whole mentality was, if we keep these inmates happy, if we keep the program going, then these other states will keep sending more inmates that generates more income, more money. What they didn't expect was the gang mentality. When you're sending gang members from anywhere, not even just California, but any type of state, it's going to get to rocking. It's going to get to rolling. So yes, Wes Watson wasn't in CCA the majority of his time, one of these privately ran prisons. He was in Oklahoma. And he tells a big old story about a riot that happened, and he was knocking people's heads off and biting people's ankles and whatever. When meanwhile, while real gangsters were doing the fighting, he was in there trying to hoop whatever he could in sight. That's what he was doing, right? Now, as far as Eloy, Arizona went, I know a gang of cats that went there. My brother actually, like I said, pulled up there, and he went there transferred from High Desert B Yard. And I'll tell you this, right? Like I said, it wasn't a privilege plan where you had to drop points and earn your way there. They just picked and chose whoever the hell they wanted and shipped you out. And that's the way the California system is. You could be on a yard one day, and for no other reason than they feel like it, they could actually come to your cell, knock on your door, tell you, roll it up. Where am I going? Doesn't matter where you're going. It's when you get there, you'll figure it out. And they'll ship you out. It's happened to me a couple times. You know, that's one thing about the state system in California and how it's ran. It's all about money and all about bed space. And if someone else needs your bed space, someone else writes a 1030. And let me explain to you what a 1030 is. And I'll explain to you a situation of what happened with me. So, I'm in Jamestown prison. And it was a non-active yard, okay? And so I thought this is where I'm going to stay. And I was happy as fuck to be there. I had a gang of homeboys from my town. I knew a lot of people. I mean, the 209 was thick. There was a gang of homies from Stockton, Modesto, Merced. It felt like Tracy all over again. I was in my backyard, right? I had it going on. I was cooking up batches of Pruno. It was the best place I could possibly be. You know, I functioned the way I want to function. Of course, man, it was a 50-50 yard, so you still checked paperwork. You still had it. You couldn't be a rat or things like that. You had to be solid to be there. But at the same time, the way the Norteños function, it was a little bit different than, say, a general population yard, whereas you were under the authority of a certain prison organization. In this place, it was kind of like back to the old school, man. Norteños had love for each other. Everyone else had love for each other. And if it popped off, it popped off. But at the same time, there were certain things you weren't forced to do. You know, you had free will, slightly. It was a cool prison. It was like doing prison back in the early 90s, okay? It was dangerous, of course, just like any other prison is, but you had a little bit more free will, less regulation. So I'm right there chilling, and some dude gets there. Okay, some dude gets there, and he tells me, hey, man, you know, whoop-de-whoop, this person or whatever is on the level 2 yard, bro, but he's fucking up. He's probably going to hit this 3. And when he does, more than likely, bro, you know, you're going to have to see him. I said, that's cool. Shit, I ain't worried about it. It is what it is. See, in prison, I already had that YA mentality. I was a YA baby. So I was under the assumption like, man, if I got to see him, I got to see him. I'm not looking for trouble, but I don't give a fuck about it either, right? It was what it was. But it didn't work out that way. I got placed in the hole. One day I get snatched up. You're getting shipped up out of here. What the fuck, right? What had happened was this guy had me on his enemy list. He wrote a 1030. So basically, he found out that I was there just like I found out that he was coming. And he immediately put me on his enemy list. And because they had nowhere else to place him, because he had to go to that specific spot for whatever reason, right? They decided one of us had to go. And because he's the one that wrote the 1030, it was going to be me that got shipped out. And a lot of people would utilize that. A lot of people would utilize that in prison. You know, if they knew someone was on a yard that they owed money or they got into a wreck with on the streets or whatever, and they found out that he was on that yard and they were going there, they would just write a 1030, put him on their enemy list, man. Putting them on their enemy list means that these two guys, back in the days, I don't know how it is now, couldn't be in the same yard and the same prison at the same time. You could be in the same prison if you're on different yards, but not on the same yard. And so they'd get rid of one of you guys. Either that guy used that to facilitate a transfer somewhere, or he used that to get you off the yard. It was an ugly situation, but a lot of people used it. There's some people that got so many 1030s written on them, it was hard to be housed. You know, they didn't have anywhere to send you because wherever you went, you had an enemy there. Not necessarily you were tripping or scared about it, but they were, right? So they would write this list. And there was a lot of people that had to go through those motions, man. There was people that I seen that dropped out and fell off and we're still getting 1030s written on them. It was crazy. So anyways, back to the way that they move in California. There was a lot of people shipped to these CCAs. And I remember talking to my brother while he was there, man. And he was like, man, this is way better than California to some degree because they had more freedoms. But at the same time, just like I said, once that mentality from California is implanted into anywhere, doesn't matter where, the gangs, the racial division, all that starts to come into play. And you started to have riots like the one in Oklahoma, and incidences like the ones that happened in La Palma in Arizona. So actually it was a dangerous situation because now you had these guys far from their families. Okay, and at first they give you little incentives and little things, and the guys are like, yeah, it's cool. Of course, when you've been in California prisons already doing years, and a lot of these guys that got shipped there weren't just getting shipped there off their bus. There was some that were going straight from reception to Eloy, Arizona, or they were going to Louisiana or Oklahoma, but the majority of them were hardened convicts who had already been doing time in California for several years. I know up until that point, my brother had been down like 10 years already. So this is the way it was, okay? And he actually went to Oklahoma as well and was out there with Wes Watson and got to see how Wes Watson wiggled. And he said, no diddy, right? Or, yeah, diddy, right? So he was doing his thing. But what happens over time is people start to realize once they see the facade of the bullshit and the leisure things that they're allowed, they start to recognize that they're far from their family. It's hard to get visits, you know, and that mentality is different. When you give someone who depends on his relationships on the streets to keep his mind sane, and now you take him and place him in a whole nother state, you can understand the situation and where I'm going with this. It makes people feel some type of way. Well, I want to tell you, man, what was going on in La Palma. According to a couple of my homeboys that were there, you know, because the Norteños and the Southsiders were there, and they were there, and it was not like it was on site. They ran it like California. They kept them in their own buildings, but then they would program together in certain spots, right? This is according to what they told me. I never was there, man. And thank God I wasn't there. I wouldn't be able to handle the interstate compacts and the transferring out of states. And I know a lot of people volunteered and were like, yeah, it's cool. It's going to be cool. Nah, it ain't cool to me. Keep me where I'm locked up at, straight up. And I've done time in other states, and I'm going to tell you, every state is different. You have to adapt to their mentality or you're fucked, you know? And sometimes if you're from California, man, you get looked at some type of way, and people automatically assume, oh, what you're trying to press, or what you guys think you're cool. And like I said, there's never, ever in between. It's always they love you or they hate you. That's their true mentality. That's how they feel, right? And I've went through both. So, you know, the Norteños were definitely pushing, just like the Southsiders were pushing. But because, you know, they were far away from home in California, there was a little bit more of that reckless mentality where, you know, shit could pop off faster than, say, in California. You know, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Did a lot of time in California prisons. 4 yards, 3 yards. I never hit anything lower than that. I tried, but I didn't, right? It seems like every time my points are about to drop, something popped off. But I'll tell you this. Never once did I ever see any issues. I mean, we had talks, conversation between the Southerners and Northerners as far as little spots on the yard and, you know, who was going to be here and who was going to be there. But as far as any tension where someone's going to get booked or it's going to pop off, there was never that. There was so much respect. In fact, I felt like the abundance of respect that we received from the Southsiders was tremendous, man. I've never felt more comfortable in my life around raza than doing time in the California system amongst Southsiders. They show a lot of respect, man. And likewise, we show them a lot of respect. And albeit, man, there are vatos that feel some type of way. Hey, they get there. Hey, homie, we don't fuck with them vatos. They move to the other guys and this and that. That shit gets put out. That fire gets put out fast. Because at the end of the day, everybody understands, man, that these are the two most vicious or violent groups. You know, the Woods too, brother. And give the blacks their due. But, you know, everybody knows, man, the SAs and the NAs are going to go. They're going to go, right? They're going to go. They're going to go. Tell them when to go because they'll go. So there's a lot of respect between the two groups. So I never, ever had an issue. Never seen nothing. I seen more whites and Southsiders get off with each other than anything. And it was crazy because these are the guys that function on the same side of the yard together. And, you know, as far as what was going on in the CCAs, I think it was just a whole fucked up program, the way these private prisons were setting up and didn't care. They were all about the money. Okay, it was all about bring whoever. We'll take whoever, any level, you know, for whatever the case may be. And basically opening a playground for these guys to gangbang, you know, and there was deaths. There was people that got whacked in these CCAs, man. A lot of Norteños that went to the CCAs came back dicked up. Basically, they came back no good. They fell off. You know, I remember being in Susanville and a vato came back. We had a couple homeboys that went, a homeboy Psycho and another homeboy that actually went to La Palma from Susanville, but they actually brought a couple dudes from there. And they were questioned extensively, man. And one of them checked in because he was so spooked on the way the homeboys were getting at him, you know. They were feeling some type of way. He had went from reception to a prison for like maybe a couple months, and then they shipped him to La Palma. And so he did a couple years there. So when he came back, the homeboys were questioning him like, hey, bro, you know, because he had never been anywhere else. So he didn't know really how to function. And that's what them CCAs did for people that really weren't on yards for too long. It kind of poisoned their mentality. They were used to a certain type of program. So that when he came, he had to reacclimate to the California system. And there you got to be on point, on your toes at all time. You can never fucking sleep on nothing, right? And this guy wasn't on point. And ultimately, he was probably going to get whacked. He was in question. They were tripping off of some shenanigans that happened over there. And he checked in. Now, I wanted to talk about that. You know, I seen a lot of guys, not necessarily that just came from out of state. This is a side note, right? A lot of guys check in. I'm going to be doing a video later on today. Who has the most protective custody inmates in California? Which group? Southsiders, Northerners, blacks, bulldogs, whites, Asians. We're going to find out today, right? I'm going to be doing that video part 2. I'm going to tell you guys this right now. It'll boggle your mind. You know, not mine because I've seen it in real life in high definition, you know. But here's some knowledge you can't get in college. I will be doing that video later and letting you know. So as far as the CCA prisons, do I think they were a good thing? Do I think they're a good thing? No, because ultimately the company that owns these prisons, they're just about the money. They don't care about your safety, about your health, about your well-being. anything. They're just about cramming as many bodies as they can in there. And of course, man, when you put a whole bunch of gang members from different sides of the state, from different states, period, into a place, what do you think is going to happen? Thunderdome. Now, in Oklahoma, they had that big riot. They didn't ever have that in La Palma, right? They didn't have that in Mississippi or Louisiana, according to what I've heard. But it was only a matter of time before prisons like that would overflow and people would blow up. Because when you got the people that ain't getting visits, when you got people that come from a different area with the gang mentality, they're going to pop it off. You know, I remember when they shipped us down south as young kids to YA, our mentality was we need to catch a body. We need to catch a body or make it as rough for the administration as possible so they ship us back up north. That was our only way of thinking. It wasn't go program, do good, and hopefully get sent back home. No, it was we need to pop it off, pop it off, pop it off. That's the gangster mentality, the gang member mentality, actually, man. You know, cause chaos to eventually they say, you know, we can't take it no more, and they ship you out. Well, they had a whole lot of taking it. Because I'm going to tell you, it didn't matter what we did or what the Southsiders did or what anyone did. Our ass went to the caja, the hole, and came right back the same day. Went right back to the hole and came right back the same day. They always made bed space available for the Northerners. We were always going to be there, man. Until eventually, they decided, okay, now you can go. You're already all fucked up, scars all over your body, scratched up, stabbed up. Now, you made it. Damn, Charlie, I knew you would. I just knew you would, right? You didn't get the chocolate factory. You got shipped to Preston like they did me. Anyways, man, I just kind of wanted to talk about the CCAs because not a lot of people talk about them. I know there's people that have actually been there and can tell you the intricacies and the details. But having family members and homeboys that did time there, they told me that shit was bammer. That, you know, a lot of these dudes would get out of prison and talk that high, tough shit. Hey, I was in the pen. I was doing this. I was doing that. They were in a fucking CCA kicking it playing Nintendo. Stop it, right? Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that raises their crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in. And that's the betterment of all people, man. Stay out of prison, period. You don't want to go to a CCA. You don't want to go to Folsom. You definitely don't want to go to Salinas Valley, right? Or Pleasant Valley. Just keep your ass out of prison and everything's going to see you all right. Stay tuned. I got videos all day.